Okay, we have our full slate of commissioners. I see Ms. Hunt. I see Ms. Coleman. We are ready to go. Good morning, everybody. The time is 10 o'clock. I call to order the, the October 5th, 2023 Planning Board meeting. We are joined by the following board members. We have our Vice Chair Bailey.
Good morning.
We also have with us Commissioners Washington.
Good morning.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Good morning, everyone.
And Commissioner Dorner.
Hello.
And I'm Chair Shapiro. And on to the business at hand. Please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration for all submission of materials and exhibits, as always, was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with the link provided in the email provided by the planning board office or listen by phone by utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. And of course, anyone may tune in to watch the planning board meeting via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, you may use our online web form, which you see referenced on the screen. In addition to the commissioners, we are joined by our senior counsel, Lisa Coleman. We have our technical hearing writer, Joe Parsons. I don't think we have Ms. Rana with us. I'm not sure. James Hunt, our division chief for the Development Review Division, and Kenneth Flanagan and Ryan Crowder helping us with technology as always behind the scenes. And we will move on. The order of cases, folks, we're going to go in the order as listed with one exception. Item 9 is a companion to item 5, so we'll take up item 9 right after item 5. And if there are any other changes, we'll process them as we go along. So first item is item 2, and I would look for a motion to approve the draft minutes of September 28, 2023.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Our next item, item 3C, this is a community planning division. This is the Largo placemaking, branding, and wayfinding strategy. We have Adam Dodson who's going to be presenting for us. Looking forward to this one. And Mr. Dodson, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everybody. It's been a while, certainly, since I spoke with you all and shared earlier progress on this strategy. Excuse me. So I want to run through the fact that this, first of all, apologies, Garrett Dickerson was going to join me, a colleague of mine in the placemaking section. Unfortunately, he has jury duty and he was selected, so he's been away the last couple of days and he's not able to join us today. But I want to run through briefly the background to this strategy. It was presented to you a while ago as a work in progress, and now I'm happy to say it was published in July of this year. So I'll give a quick overview of sort of the background to it and the timeline. I want to give a high-level content overview and some of the suggested approaches that the strategy comes up with. And then I want to go through next steps. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as I know you'll be aware, Largo is one of the 8 regional transit districts, and one of our 3 downtowns, which are, highlighted to be walkable and vibrant places. And in particular, Largo also has an additional sort of medical research and healthcare focus. And having more walkability and vibrancy in those areas would certainly help with that goal. Next slide, please. Want to touch on the project lifecycle. So back in 2020, we appointed Tool Design and their sub-consultants to do this work. They reviewed existing conditions. They went around Largo and looked at everything. They received community input. So we had focus group meetings where we invited a smaller group of people to have a more focused discussion. They included our partner agencies. They included developers, landowners in the area, and the regional medical center. And they, of course, included members of the community. And we also had separate community meetings. Of course, during the pandemic, this was all virtual, but we had what we considered to be at least a reasonable turnout for that time. and the consultants created the initial draft strategy. Then we moved into conversations around whether we should be enlarging the area because, of course, Largo is very close to FedEx Field and Sports and Learning and Morgan Boulevard. And while we didn't want to broaden it to look at huge parcels and larger areas, we wanted to consider the connectivity between Largo and FedEx Field and Morgan Boulevard, hence the slightly strange-looking additional project area that mostly follows the two main roads there. But that required additional consultation, and the draft was revised. And then in 2022, the draft was submitted, went through a number of reviews and edits for various different reasons. And then the strategy, as I say, was published in July of this year. Next slide, please. Obviously, the strategy wasn't produced in a vacuum, and so apart from just Plan 2035 and the Largo Town Centre Sector Plan, we looked also at a ULI study in 2015 and the Economic Development Strategy at the time, all of which were pointing to the fact that Largo kind of lacked an identity, wasn't particularly walkable or legible. It wasn't easy to find your way around unless you were in the car. All the signage was kind of geared towards drivers. And there was no kind of real sort of brand or sense of place in Largo. Next slide, please. So getting into the strategy now, a really high-level content overview of each of the segments, the placemaking, the branding, and the wayfinding. That image was taken from our Largo, downtown Largo day that we did in conjunction with the Largo Town Centre Association in August of this year, right in front of the Wayne K. Curry building, which is, I'm sure you would know, is the site for a proposed civic plaza. So we were able to sort of demonstrate the sorts of things that you might be able to see in that space. But the placemaking section of the strategy looks at the different types of areas in Largo. You have parking areas, lots of them. You have some open spaces, some are private, some are public, and some are no one's quite sure. You have some existing parks and spaces. And so the strategy looks at sort of thinking what sorts of other activities can happen in those places, what sorts of activity are really geared for those places. You'll notice from this that some of it is very passive, such as wildflowers and habitat. That's deliberate, it still can add to a sense of place. And some of it is geared to activity, whether it be sports or play, or just sitting and enjoying, or something like movies or the festival that you see on the screen there. Next slide, please. Into the branding section. Again, that sign was something that was made for us for the event. It was really interesting, at least for me, to see how this sign became a real stopping point for people at the event. There were live bands playing, there was food, and there were many, many vendors and other things for kids to do. But people would stop and take pictures in front of this. It was a real sort of, I guess, in today's world, it was an Instagram moment, and people were taking pictures and being really happy and proud to be in front of just something as simple as a sign that says Largo. It was really impactful to see how that was being treated by everybody just by having it there on site. But in our community meetings, we had lots of conversations about whether there should be a brand for Largo, and these were the sorts of phrases that the public came up with. Living in Largo was obviously the kind of the jump-off point. Living, loving Largo, etc. And actually at the event, when we worked with the Town Centre Association, their sort of members came up with Love My Largo. So the kind of the loving and living was a strong theme. And although the strategy doesn't actually go as far as saying this should be the brand for Largo, it just hosts that conversation. Next slide, please. And into the wayfinding, I mean, the picture highlights, it's obviously not in the center of Largo, but the picture highlights one of the main issues, which is everything is geared towards automobile signage. And so the wayfinding section really talks about all the different opportunities there are for wayfinding for all the different users in Largo, whether they be pedestrians or cyclists, or of course, motorists as well. And really it looks at sort of what the rhythm of the signage should be, how often signage should appear, how regularly should certain things appear on the signs, how to make it updatable, because as new businesses arrive or as new areas are developed, you want to recognize those on signs. And so, it talks about all of the practical side of things as well. And of course, it references the Maryland, oh gosh, I knew I'd fudge this now, the MUTCD, the transit design criteria that have to be followed when making new signs for different types of users. So what it does do is it has this big discussion about where new signage could or should be in Largo, what type of style should it be. And of course, we have to recognize Largo is at one end of the blue and silver line corridor on Central Avenue. And as that whole area gets its own sort of rebranding, we can look at whether the signage that is proposed for Largo might also be repeatable down the corridor. Next slide, please. So just taking a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the content and where the consultants and we got together to talk about what are the sort of approaches that we could take for each of the areas. And so with placemaking, as you can see here, you know, clearly placemaking only comes from the community. We can't do anything by ourselves. We can't say, you guys need a statue here, you guys need a, you know, a monument sign here, but we can work and say, these are the kinds of things that we're thinking about. These are the kinds of opportunities that are presented. And placemaking itself offers a wonderful opportunity for demonstration projects. You know, you don't have to do something permanent straight off the bat, such as, you know, the image at the bottom there is actually in Montgomery County, but the previous image of the Largo day that we had was all temporary. Everything is now gone. Even the paint that was used to paint the slogans and things on the parking lot there was washed away within 24 or 48 hours. So placemaking offers that opportunity to say, well, let's try things out. Let's work with the community. Let's work with our artists. Let's work with the community college and others and say, let's put some things down here and have people leave feedback and say, you know, this is something we really want to see more of, or I don't really know why this is here and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think about it. So these placemaking approaches are geared towards, you know, testing things out, seeing what works, seeing what the community wants to see more of, and then taking that into a much more firm strategy. Next slide, please. I guess taking that a stage further, the sort of what happens now, what happens next, and then as it says, when the time is right. So as this sort of talks more about what I was just saying about how things that happen now can be temporary, testing out spaces, you know, giving people a signal that something's coming, and hopefully building up that momentum and wanting people to be more engaged and interested in what's going on. And then those prototype projects, again, the consultant mentioned a number of different things here, which, you know, are all up for discussion. This is not like this is a punch list, this has to happen, but these were ideas that came up in conversation with the community and in also thinking more about working with our partners, such as what could we do at the Metro Plaza? Should we be considering whether there could be free Wi-Fi everywhere? And in particular, there's also an emphasis on what might happen on game day, because although many people will get off at Morgan Boulevard, many people come from the other direction and might park up in Largo and walk from there. So is there an ability there to sort of pump up what happens on a game day, and whether there can be sort of tailgating in and around Largo as they walk to FedEx Field? And then some of the more long-term, frankly, more costly, you know, interventions and activations will come with working with people like DPW&T and looking at implementing, you know, complete streets and thinking about how many travel lanes we have in Largo and how many we really need, and thinking about how that can make things more walkable. But it doesn't just have to be a sidewalk. There can also be art along the sidewalk and places to stop and think and enjoy, and even take up, you know, fitness challenges and things of that nature. So the strategy touches on all of these things. It's on us now to think about what should come next and then start testing things out. Next slide, please. So into branding, maybe something's a bit more obvious here. Branding is certainly not something the planning department is used to getting involved with. And ultimately, the recommendation from the consultants about branding was, if you want to really push this forward, it might be worth hiring a consultant to take on a specific branding exercise. But things that we know from other places, whether they be local or otherwise, are, you know, what about using placemaking? What about using monuments and things to show that there's a brand coming or there's something happening in the area? You'll probably be aware, I'm sure you'll be aware, that in Upper Marlborough, for example, the appearance of all those sort of life-sized horse statues is not just something that was there to celebrate the equestrian event, but was also the first sort of sign that Upper Marlborough is rebranding itself and thinking about it being part of horse country, for example. But also branding helps with signage, wayfinding. People say, well, meet me at the, you know, the multicolored horse rather than just meet me at the corner of a parking lot. So it provides destinations, and you can use art and other things to really boost the brand once you've made those decisions. Next slide, please. And in the wayfinding, obviously this is not real, it's a mock-up because that's outside the station, but this is just giving an idea of what the signage could look like. We've probably all seen similar signs on our travels. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, whether they could be digital or whether they would just be, something that is there in hard form. That's another conversation. But really what's important for us to think about when we focus in on wayfinding is, where are those travel nodes? Where are those decision points that people have to make? And what's that hierarchy of destinations? So the more important the destination, such as the metro or the hospital, the further away you'll be signaling how to get to it. Something much more local, you might not find a sign for it until you're closer to it. That ties in, as I mentioned before, with the branding. And we would then, consider working with our partners on what the design would look like, and certainly working with the executive and others on what the design would look like, especially if it's tied in with the whole Blue Line corridor. And then really helping, testing it out and making sure that we have those consistent visuals, the locations make sense, and they're striking, interesting, but also, most importantly, informative. Next slide, please. So for us, what we see as the next steps, really, we're working on a draft implementation plan, as was pointed earlier on, the short, the medium, and the long term. And then we think by probably spring, possibly sooner, but spring of next year, we would then really hit some more stakeholder engagement and start to share some of these more concrete, obviously, hopefully they won't be concrete, ideas with people. And then into the summer, we can start thinking about actually having those demonstration projects. What I've said there about activations and backdrops to meetings, we're already finding this, it's not something that's new really, but we're finding we're getting much more community engagement on our consultation in port towns and on the Central Blue Line plan by having conversations with a backdrop, whether it be a farmer's market or whether it be a festival. We asked a lot of questions of the residents at the Largo Downtown placemaking day. So, using demonstrations as a means of attracting people in and saying, oh, what's going on here? It's like, well, now that we have you, yes, you can look at the local vendors or you can and frequent the farmer's market, but actually we have some questions for you. So using it to get more feedback, to use it to refine where we go next. And obviously our online content is really important. And so we'll be looking to develop graphics. There has been a video that the consultants did for us, and we're just sort of topping and tailing that before we publish it. It runs through, it kind of does some walkthroughs of different routes and sort of imagines what they might look like when some of this stuff has been put into place. So really, after the demonstrations, some of the things that we would hope to have that would stay longer would start to appear in the fall of next year. Last slide, please. As I say, unfortunately, Garrett couldn't be with us today, but this is our contact information. And obviously, I'm happy to take any questions that you have or comments right now. Thank you very much for your time.
You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, just saw that. Thank you. Thank you very much. So questions. First of all, let me just say, loving this, but turn to my colleagues. Any questions, thoughts, reactions?
Yeah, I don't have any questions, but I too absolutely love this. And I would just say how excited I am to see the branding incorporated here. And I would strongly encourage us to really lean into that, because when we think about identity, without strong branding, you almost just don't get there. So if I heard you correctly, there's the possibility to maybe bring in a consultant to really focus on that. So I would certainly be in favor of that. And thank you. And Mr. Dickerson, who's out doing his civic duty. So
yes, thank you.
Other thoughts, questions, reactions?
I just want to make sure that our new building, our new location, when it's finished, is on the wayfinding. Especially when we have residents who want to come there and maybe taking the metro, so they know how to get to the building. That's all. But thank you very much for the presentation. I'm excited about it too.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Commissioner. And building on that, I just want to say that, we have, not only we have our building, but we have a big piece of undeveloped land next to our building, and we are looking at all sorts of creative ways to make sure that can help contribute to this placemaking activity, because it's a site for pop-up activities. We're trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah, I would also like to add that this is very interesting and I'm looking forward to the next step. It's often sometimes very difficult to describe what Prince George's is really about in some cases. We've got this over here and that over there, but it seems like this will be a focal point. And so that's really exciting as we lean into it and get more information.
Yeah,
Well said.
I agree with all those comments. I think this is great. I mean, everything you've done so far is just awesome, and especially involving the community with this. In particular, what I wanted to point out and thank you for is at the very beginning of the presentation, you were deliberate in acknowledging that everything up until this date has been very car-centric or automobile-centric, and we're finding ways to not have that. And when I started on the planning board, 7 years ago or so, that wasn't the case. When we would go through hearings, I was just constantly griping that staff presentations and applicant presentations were just so automobile focused. I deliberately don't have 2 cars in our household because we want to take advantage of public transit. I use a combination of ways to get to the metro and get to work and stuff and get back. I ride bus, I walk, I ride the metro, I do bike shares. I'm a little bit hesitant on the scooters because I'm just not as good on those. But I think we need to have that for folks. And that's really opened my eyes even more about the challenges and sidewalk issues and all sorts of things that are around just a small part of the county that I do those things in. So I'm glad to see around the county that we're doing this focus in a much more deliberate way from the start. So thank you for highlighting that because it's really important that we get everyone around and we have accessibility and equity in doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, well said. I like the use of the word deliberate here too. I just think it's so helpful that we're taking a deliberate and methodical approach to all these issues. Wonderful. Just a quick question for me around partnerships. Obviously, the work in the community. I'm curious about if you could sort of give us a flavor of some of the work with some other stakeholders. Like I was thinking, for example, when it comes to branding, are we in conversation with experienced Prince George's around that? And so talk a little bit about that, Adam, if you can.
Yes, of course. And yeah, I would say, as we're thinking of our implementation plan, we have not yet had any conversations. I obviously wanted to make this presentation in particular, and I know I'm going to be talking to the council member as well. But yes, Experienced Prince George's and the Arts and Humanities Council would be, key partners on the branding. I know you were involved, at least in early meetings, when we talked with Upper Marlborough, and of course, Wanda Dallas and the work she did in Upper Marlborough was phenomenal. And so, we would definitely want to partner with them because another advantage of this, of course, is that you can get local artists and then you're making, important contributions from local artists. You're not trying to go national. You don't need to. We have so many wonderful community artists here and the community there deserves to be celebrated. And we would definitely do that as part of this. We'd make it clear that this came from the local community. And make sure that it was, all over our website and social media. This is something, by Prince George's for Prince George's.
Right.
Yeah, wonderful. So I would encourage you to. I would ask you all to keep us updated around this, and that's not a weekly or monthly briefing, but at some regular touch points as progress is being made. Just really curious to see how this progresses, rolls out, because this is a model for how we want to. Take up planning economic development in all sorts of places around the county.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions on this briefing, folks? All right, thank you. Thanks to you and your team. Very much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we're going to go to our consent agenda. We have 3 items on our consent agenda. I want to ask if there's anyone from the public or board members, but specifically anyone from the public who wishes to discuss any of these items on the consent agenda. Give folks a second, because I heard some rumblings that there may be somebody who wants to discuss one of these items. Do we have that person on the line? Okay, not. So no one from the public, no board member. So I would look for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, after consideration of the records for items numbers 4B.
Oh, wait, hold on one sec. Madam Vice Chair, hold on one sec. Ms. Jefferson?
Oh,
We can't hear you.
I'm
No,
here.
we can't. Go
Chris
ahead.
Jefferson's here.
Okay. Ms. Jefferson, do you want to, do you want us to pull one of these items from the consent agenda?
No, I'm not sure that I want to have any of the items pulled. This is for the solar array panels hearing, correct?
Oh, okay, Ms. Jefferson. No, that's for later in the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we will certainly get to that item in a bit. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, Madam Vice Chair, I apologize. Back to you in your motion.
after consideration of the records for items number 4B, 4D, and 4E, I move adoption of the staff findings and approval of items on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
Second,
A motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion. I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. We will now move on to our regular agenda. First item on the regular agenda is item number 5, the detailed site plan, DSP 22025, Future Stars Early Learning Center. We will be taking this item up again in companion with item number 9.
9.
Depending. This is an evidentiary hearing. So if we do have folks who are intending to provide testimony, I will ask them to take an oath. Not sure that we will, but we'll come to that when the time comes. So let's start with the staff presentation by Mr. Shelley. And then we'll hear from the representative of the applicant, Ms. Scudder. Mr. Shelley, take it away. The floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair. Are you able to hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. For the record,
Shelley,
I'm
hold on
Andrew.
one sec. Hold on one second. We're having some technical issues on the slide presentation. I think we're okay now. Go ahead. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. For the record, I'm Andrew Shelley with the Urban Design section. Item number 5 is detailed site plan DSP-22025 for Future Stars Early Learning Center, which requests approval for the conversion of a 1,053 square foot tenant space within a 9,530 square foot existing shopping center to allow a daycare center for children use to replace an existing commercial retail use. The daycare center has a proposed enrollment of 12 children with the capacity to accommodate up to 20. As a matter of housekeeping, the applicant has provided 6 exhibits prior to the hearing deadline on October 3rd, 2023. Exhibits 1 through 5 are revised plans to indicate conformance to the recommended conditions of the staff report. However, after further discussion with staff regarding the proposed revised recreational play equipment, a 6th exhibit was added. Exhibit 6 proposes a new condition, Condition 1H, that states the applicant is to provide revised play equipment, including Americans with Disability Act or ADA play equipment, in the open play area on the DSP, subject to the review of the urban design section. Staff is in agreement with the condition as written, which provides an opportunity to further enhance the play equipment for the daycare children. Given the space limitations of the site, play equipment that does not require a fall zone will be emphasized by staff. Based on evaluation and analysis, urban design staff recommend that the Planning Board adopt the findings of this report and approve DSP-22025, subject to the recommended conditions of approval within the technical staff report, further modified by proposed condition 1H provided by the applicant and agreed upon by staff in applicant exhibit 6. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelley. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll turn to the applicant. If Ms. Scudder, if you have anything you want to add, or do we need to hear from any members of your team? I'll leave it to you. The floor is yours. You're on mute, Ms. Scudder.
Okay, sorry about that. Good morning, Chairman Shapiro and members of the Planning Board. For the record, my name is Tracy Scudder, and this morning I have the pleasure of representing Future Stars Early Learning Center and Ms. Coles Jackson, the applicant. I will be very brief this morning. I'd like to thank Andrew Shelley for his work on this application. We've had an opportunity to review the technical staff report, and we concur with the findings and recommendations to include the conditions of approval. Recently, we had an occasion to meet with staff. They made some very good suggestions on how we can improve the play area to make it more inclusive for all children. It is a very tight area, but we definitely want to maximize the space, and the advice we received from staff helped us improve. We look forward to working with them during certification on the final design. With that being said, we're in agreement with the new condition 1H. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation by just saying that Ms. Coles Jackson is very excited about reaching the end of this process. Her childcare services are in high demand at this location, and hopefully we'll see her opening more locations in the county. I know she's very excited to get going. So at this time, I'll conclude by just respectfully requesting that the Planning Board approve DSP 22025 for Future Stars. And thank you. We're happy to respond to any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Scudder. Appreciate that. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant's team, Ms. Scudder?
I have a question. I didn't see it in the report, but what safety measures is the Early Learning Center going to take with the vehicle traffic in the shopping mall? So,
all right, questions. Ms. Scudder, do you want to hear from your team on this? Or are you able to answer the question?
I guess I would turn to maybe, is Kayla here? If Kayla could turn on her mic, she could probably talk about the parking spaces. I think this particular daycare center is only required to provide 4 or 5 parking spaces. Kayla, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't anticipate it being a high parking or high traffic generating use. There are, again, she only has 12 students right now, 12 kids, and that it'll go up to 20. But I think with, the staggered drop-offs during the morning, I think that will help with, any, traffic concerns. But Kayla or Ms. Coles Jackson, Kayla, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yes, I can.
This is Commissioner. There's a difference. That's not the question I asked. So what I'm concerned about is there's going to be children there, right? Coming and going. It's still an active shopping center, I'm assuming. So what type of safety measures, what type of signage would you have? For example, children in this neighborhood, or just something that would alert other drivers or people using the shopping center knowing that there's children present. That's my concern.
Okay.
All right, and Ms. Rogers, I'm going to need to swear you in since this is an evidentiary hearing. So if you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, all right, consider yourself sworn in. And then again, the safety issues that Commissioner Giraldo is questioning about, either you or Ms. Scudder.
Tracy, would you like to start off with that?
Is Ms. Coles Jackson here? Ms. Coles Jackson? She's not in here. I will say, Commissioner, that, we are happy to take a closer look at that issue. I can't say that, as a team, we've really discussed that. We are happy to your point about just children, this being a new child care center at this shopping center. And to the extent there may be concerns about, the safety of the children, we are certainly happy to, look at some additional signage to address that, like maybe, like you were saying, slow down, or children present, or children playing in the area. So, we would be, willing to, even accept a condition at this time to where we could have an opportunity to work with staff on coming up with some good signage that would address that concern. I'm sorry we didn't anticipate this question, but again, it's a very good question, and I understand your concern. And we are, again, happy to work a little further on that with staff, maybe during certification, to get some good, signage out there.
So Ms. Scudder, what you're saying is you're proffering a condition to work with staff to develop or place signage for the protection of the children.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And Commissioner
thank you.
Giraldo, this is Andrew Shelley with the Urban Design section. We have some folks from our transportation team that can speak further to this, but in regarding the site layout, I would just like to note if the technical presenter could go to slide 9, please. And while the presenter goes to that slide, I would just like to note that the site has an designated outdoor play area behind the rear of the building. That outdoor play area will be fenced, so a 6-foot board-on-board wooden fence with a gate as well for access. The rear of the site, one side on the left-hand portion, which would be the western portion of the site, has bollards that block traffic. And on the right-hand side is a existing chain link fence, which also blocks traffic. So I do not believe that vehicles will be accessing the rear of that property. So while in the back, the children will be, and there is still being a fence provided in conformance with the zoning regulations. So just to give some emphasis on the safety measures being provided for the outdoor play area. And in the front, there is signage for the vehicle drop-off area as well. But with that, I'll turn to Mr. Ryan in the transportation planning section.
Hi, good morning, Chair Shapiro, members of the board. Benjamin Ryan with the Transportation Planning section. I just wanted to add that in reviewing this plan, this is an existing shopping center with an existing sidewalk. We did recommend crosswalks across both points of vehicle access just to give motorists a bit more awareness that there will be pedestrians in this location. And as Mr. Shelley mentioned, the play area is to the rear and would be fenced in. So we felt confident reviewing this site that the children would be safe, and the crosswalks do add a bit more awareness. So.
Well, crosswalks all over the county and people still get hit in them. So all I'm suggesting is some signage that simply says, slow down, drive as if your children live here, whatever, just something like that. I mean, I wasn't worried about the back because I knew it was fenced, but I am concerned about it. Suppose a parent drops the child off in a parking space and has a child walking to the daycare center. So I'm just interested in some signage to keep the other people aware of what's going on.
Yeah, now let me just jump in, Commissioner, because I hear you loud and clear. I think we have heard from the applicant that they're willing to condition this, work with staff to make sure that any final pieces of this get resolved, including signage. So I think if the applicant is comfortable with that, I think we can we can include that in the action that we take if we take it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I would just say that, obviously we'll have to work with the shopping center owner too, as far as, getting the shopping center owner's permission for where we would, put such signage. But I think that, for something like this and for the safety of the children, hopefully the shopping center owner won't have any issue with us, implementing something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scudder.
All right, thanks staff for that. Thank you, Ms. Scudder. Any other questions for the applicant on this item or staff? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I imagine there's no further deliberation on this, so I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve DSP-22025 along with the conditions as outlined in staff's report and as further modified by applicant exhibit number 6. In addition to adding a proffered condition, and I would ask staff to work with council and the applicant on the appropriate language, but in essence, it is to ensure appropriate signage is placed with the safety of children in mind.
Excellent.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. I'm sorry, under discussion, Commissioner Dorner.
Quick discussion point, and it's not necessarily entirely for this case, but what Ms. Scudder might want to consider is we just got out of a session on placemaking and talking about local art and different things and painting the parking lots and streets and stuff. One thing you might consider is on that crosswalk, painting it like kids are walking across it, or having like a local artist do that, because that would be a really cool way for the kids to feel like warm and welcome coming in there and seeing that. It would also get Instagrammable moments, if I can steal the words that our staff use, and it would just be kind of nice to have in there. For our transportation staff, I'm assuming they're still online, and Mr. Shelley can kind of back with them later. I would encourage our staff to think about those sorts of things too. Proactively think about how we can increase visual awareness on sidewalks or different things like that. Something that we don't do around this county that would be simple, like around schools or places where kids are going to be walking across. If we had crosswalks on both sides of that, and we had just a bucket or just like a container with little flags, kids could pick up the flag and they could hold that as they're walking across the street. It's fun. It teaches kids safety. It's very visually appealing and obvious as people are kind of going around there. So just thinking about ways that we can do things that are potentially a little bit different in cases like this, to make crossing streets not seem scary, crossing intersections not seem dangerous, and actually have sort of a fun component that's kind of curious and kind of plays to some of kids' sort of natural instincts. And that can create conversations for parents as well, to help talk with kids about why they're holding the flag, why they need to be careful when they're crossing roads. And there's overall win-win for these sorts of situations. So I know that the flag idea doesn't really apply in this particular case, but I wanted to use this as an example to kind of nudge everyone to think a little bit more outside the box about ways that we can improve our communities and teach local citizens about just being careful with each other and being a little bit more mindful.
Sure. I love the creative thinking. Thank you for that. Okay, any further discussion? If not, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. The companion item for this, I don't think there's any discussion that we need on this item. This is the draft resolution just to move this process forward. Ms. Scudder, I assume you'll be happy with that. Mr. Shelley, do we need to hear anything from you, or can we just take this up?
I do not believe you need to hear anything from me, but thank you.
Okay.
Again, Andrew Shelley with Urban Design.
All right, so Commissioners, item 9 is the draft resolution for this DSP. And unless there's any questions or discussion, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval to incorporate the proper conditions.
Before you do the motion, I think Commissioner Giraldo wanted to comment on something.
No. Commissioner Washington got it. She's got it.
Okay.
She was going to add the new condition.
Restarting, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the draft resolution and also incorporate the proper condition by the applicant with regards to children's safety.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington and an eager second by Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion?
Madam
Seeing
Commissioner,
none,
we can also get that to include the new condition 1H. It was not included in the draft.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Well, I thought because I included it in the motion, it would carry over, but I certainly would add to the motion new condition 1H as outlined in applicant exhibit 6.
So
I
the
accept the
maker of the
amendment.
motion, the second of the motion, and both agree that we'll be including condition 1H in this draft resolution. Any further discussion? Ms. Coleman, that's good enough? Okay. All right. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington,
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner,
But
Vice Chair Bailey.
But I,
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Scudder. Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Thank you, Mr. Shelley and Mr. Ryan. And we'll move on to the next item. Next item on the agenda is item 6. Hold on one sec as I shuffle my paperwork. Item 6, this is a countywide planning division mandatory referral, MRF 2022-025 Brook Road Solar Array. We have Ms. Hassan who's going to be giving a staff presentation. We have Mr. Tedesco. You'll be representing the applicant, I imagine. I see Mr. Tedesco. There you are. Okay, great. And we have folks who signed up to speak. Let me just state for the record, as I've done before for mandatory referrals, that per state law and the planning board's mandatory referral guidelines, privately owned public utility projects, such as community solar projects, are not subject to local zoning. Rather, the planning board reviews and comments on these projects through the mandatory referral process. The mandatory referral process is also an opportunity for the public to provide input. And we are very pleased to have the opportunity for that input. So with that, I will turn to Ms. Hassan. You'll give the staff presentation, and the floor is, good to see you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Shapiro. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Okay. Good morning, Planning Board members. For the record, I'm Fatima Hassan, Special Project Section of the Countywide Planning Division. This mandatory referral review is for MRF 2022-025 Brook Road Solar Array, construction of a 3-megawatt solar energy facility at 1404 Brook Road, and it includes several adjacent parcels on 12.6 acres of a 17.33 acre group of parcels in Capitol Heights. The proposed project has been approved and admitted by the Maryland Public Service Commission and PEPCO to market the electric energy as part of the PEPCO Community Solar Program, providing 51% of the system capacity to low and moderate income PEPCO customers. The program seeks to provide a renewable energy source for households in the area. Next slide, please. The site is located in Councilmanic District 7, District Heights and Vicinity Planning Area 75A, in the established communities portion of the county. Next slide, please. The proposed project site is shown here, outlined in red. Parcel 227, which is the small triangular parcel, fronts on Brook Road. And also Campbell Avenue dead ends or intersects near the rear of parcel 227. And the other three parcels, parcel 230, 231, and 232, are accessible by vehicle through an unidentified road that intersects with Rollins Avenue. The proposed project site is in a residential area surrounded by single-family detached, semi-detached, and attached residential land uses and woodlands. There's an elementary school, Doswell Brooks Elementary, on the other side of Brook Road. Next slide, please. The parcels are zoned RSF 65, a single family zone with minimum lot size of 6,500 square feet. Next slide, please. Most of the parcels in the proposed project site have historically been used for a Class 3 landfill. In the Planning Board's siting preference hierarchy for solar projects, the proposed site is in the #1 most suitable location That is, quote, locations on disturbed land such as brownfields, reclaimed surface mines, abandoned rubble fields, and closed landfills, end quote. Parcels 227, 230, and 232 are partially developed with residential dwellings. The site is partially wooded and contains a stream. Next slide, please. The parcels are in the lower Anacostia River watershed that flows into the Anacostia River and the Potomac River. The site has regulated environmental features such as streams and their associated buffers. There is natural screening along the site's boundaries. The site has an approved natural resource inventory plan, which shows 12.6 acres of woodland in the net tract and 0.94 acres of primary management area. No unsafe soils or slope issues are mapped on site. A determination of appropriate erosion and settlement control measures will be made by the Prince George's Soil Conservation District. Next slide, please. The proposed site connects to Brook Road, and there is a residential road that is Campbell Avenue, which, as I said, abuts and terminates at parcel 227. Neither Brook Road nor Campbell Avenue carry a master plan right-of-way designation. Next slide, please. To summarize, the two ground-mounted solar arrays would generate a total of 3 megawatts of energy. A total of 6,578 solar panels, that is our 540-watt solar panels, are proposed, and security is provided by a 7-foot tall black vinyl-clad chain link fence. A 10 to 16-foot wide limestone chip or equal driveway would provide access, and the ground is covered for pollinator habitat. Next slide, please. The planning department sent out a notice to adjoining, confronting, and abutting property owners and area civic associations. The applicant arranged for a meeting with the Brook Road, Rollins Avenue, Walker Mill Avenue Civic Association on September 18th. And at that meeting, 15 to 20 people attended, including Senator Joanne Benson and Council Member Oriata. The main point of contention was that there was another solar facility located nearby, about a mile away, off of Ventura Avenue. Community members were concerned that they didn't know about the other solar project, and they had issues with an additional solar array also in the area. They brought up the other solar array, which is off of Addison Road. Next slide, please. Here is the list of permitting agencies. The mandatory referral review process does not exempt any project from meeting the requirements of other agencies, and the application may require final approvals from the agencies listed here. Next slide, please. This is a site plan for the proposed solar array. The limits of disturbance total 12.6 acres. The solar array would be in the area shown here and will interconnect to existing utility lines, including an existing utility pole on Campbell Avenue. The existing dwellings on parcels 230 and 232 will be demolished. Access to the proposed project will be provided via a new driveway off of the end of Campbell Avenue and at the eastern end of parcel 227. The proposed project will use a state-of-the-art solar project modeling software. The solar panels will use a fixed tilt racking system, which will undergo additional testing prior to establishing the final racking system. As I mentioned, the ground under the solar panels will be covered with low-growth herbaceous cover with pollinator value to benefit wildlife habitat. Upon completion of the proposed construction and vegetation, the vegetation cover is stabilized, and this will be determined pending Department of Permitting, Inspection, and Enforcement approval and fire code review and inspection approval at the time of permit. Water quality following rain events could be enhanced because the grasses, pollinators, and other plantings will improve the filtering process. Also, I mentioned the 7-foot tall vinyl coated black chain link security fence that is to shield it from adjacent properties. Next slide, please. The recommendations are listed here, and I will highlight some of them. Staff recommends using native species and herbaceous seed mix with high pollinator value within the solar array. And prior to the issuance of a use and occupancy permit, the applicant should contact the Prince George's County Fire EMS Department to request a pre-incident emergency plan for the facility and to ensure that the width and treatment of the access road is suitable for fire vehicles. Also, I'd like to mention number 4, providing a landscape plan referencing landscape manual sections for screening requirements so that screening and buffering can be addressed. Next slide, please. Additional recommendations are listed here, including conforming to the minimum tree canopy cover requirement or demonstrate exemption criteria prior to issuance of permits for the project, and submitting a circulation plan that shows there is sufficient turnaround distance for emergency vehicles within the site. This completes staff recommendations, and I'm available to answer questions, and the applicant is also represented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hassan. Commissioners, before we hear from the applicant, any questions for staff? No questions. We'll turn to Mr. Tedesco. Before we hear from folks in the public, Mr. Tedesco, introduce yourself.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Thank you so much. Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. My name is Matthew Tedesco with the law firm of McNamee Hosey in Greenbelt here in Prince George's County, representing the applicant, which is PG Solar LLC, who's represented this morning by Mr. Trey Pippin. We also have Mr. Wade Collinson from Atwell LLC, local civil engineer for the project. First and foremost, I want to thank Ms. Hassan for her review of this application. Obviously, as you can imagine, on like all cases, we work very closely with staff and appreciate her review, her guidance, and obviously the recommendations in the staff report that was prepared in this case. In addition to Ms. Hassan, I just want to personally also thank Mr. Ray and Ms. Schulers for their assistance with this application. I also want to thank the citizens and the elected officials that took an interest or have taken an interest into this project. To that point, Mr. Collinson and his staff mailed out more than 269 mailings for the site development concept plan associated with this development. We entertained about 7 to 10 phone calls in response to either those letters or other notification letters that the staff had sent out. And as Ms. Hassan indicated, we have been in communication with Ms. Jefferson, who is the president of the BRW Civic Association. I just want to personally, publicly thank her. We have had some interactions via email, as well as attended their September 18, 2023 meeting, which was well attended and I thought very informative for both sides. And I want to thank Ms. Jefferson and her representatives and community members for their interest, as well as the elected officials that Ms. Hassan referenced in her presentation. If you would allow me just a little bit of indulgence, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board, notwithstanding the fact that this is a mandatory referral and the board's authority in such cases is somewhat limited, I do want to highlight a few points that in addition to what Ms. Hassan highlighted in her presentation, which we do agree with. During our meetings and during conversations, as well as other projects we've had and other projects you all have had with solar, and we do get a lot, well, you know, what's up with all the solar, right? And so I wanted to just kind of take a step back and just make sure that for informational purposes, we kind of understand the need for this renewable energy source. So the state of Maryland, for all those that may not know, the state of Maryland increased its renewable portfolio standard, otherwise known as RPS, target goals from 25% to have renewable clean energy by 2020 to 50% by 2030, and up to 100% renewable energy, clean energy by 2040. In 2019, then Governor Hogan proposed the Clean and Renewable Energy Standard, also known as CARES, C-A-R-E-S, which is Senate Bill 265, that sets the state on the path to have 100% clean renewable energy by the year 2040, with a zero carbon emissions goal. Specifically, Senate Bill 265, or CARES, builds upon the RPS Renewable Portfolio Standards by providing a strategy for the state of Maryland to achieve better environmental results through clean energy. It expands the eligibility of credits for clean energy resources to encourage competitive and cost-effectiveness for the benefits of ratepayers. Therefore, to achieve these goals and to provide available solar energy, clean, renewable energy, solar projects are not only needed, but necessary. Now, turning to the project, and not to be repetitive to Ms. Hassan's presentation, this is a community solar energy generation system, otherwise known as CSEGS. As Ms. Hassan indicated, the total property is over 17 acres. The limits of disturbance, which include also stormwater facilities, although 12 acres, the actual array is only making up 8.3 acres of the total 17. As Ms. Hassan indicated and as provided in our narrative, the site is a former Class 3 landfill. Under the solar energy system guidelines that the Planning Board adopted, the number one siting preference for most suitable for these types of systems is a brownfields or closed landfills. Under COMAR section 20.62.01.02 B3C, I always love citing the COMAR, it's a mouthful. The site qualifies as a brownfield. Further, under COMAR, the co-location of systems is allowed. In this case, we have one system to the south, which is a 1 megawatt system, and the system to the north, which is 2 megawatts, comprising of what Ms. Hassan indicated was a total of 3 megawatts. The site was chosen because of its prior characteristics as a Class 3 fill. Prior imagery that we've provided to staff, as well as on your PG Atlas system, shows the vast majority of the site where the array is to be proposed is formally cleared as associated with that former Class 3 fill. We will be required to obtain a TCP2. There are existing woodlands and site topographies and natural screening that ensures that this array is not visible and screened. And we're taking advantage of those previously cleared areas. Now, turning to the mandatory referral process, and I know, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned this at the beginning, but I think it's worth highlighting that we are here before you and your authority is subject to the Land Use Article Section 20-301, which requires mandatory referral for privately owned public utilities, for which this application fits. By reference, I do want to just incorporate and adopt Ms. Deborah Borden, your general counsel's testimony and summary of the mandatory referral process at a hearing dated December 10, 2020, in a prior mandatory referral case number MR-1915. Ms. Borden, during that hearing, very artfully and eloquently, as you all could imagine, went through the Planning Board's authority and the mandatory referral process, citing back to its origins under sovereign immunity. I don't dare bore the Planning Board or anyone else with the history and common law of sovereign immunity and how mandatory referral derives therefrom. And I would just further state that we would incorporate Ms. Borden's comments and summary of mandatory referral from that case. But in brief, it's basically the state's retention of its rights in these particular matters. There are also unreported cases from the appellate courts confirming that preemption of state law over local zoning law. What does that result into? The Planning Board has merely a recommendation in this case under the land use article. But to make sure that there's guidelines in place for the review of these cases, the planning board adopted the uniform standards for mandatory referral and specifically guidelines as it relates to the solar energy systems. These guidelines simply provide parameters for the planning board when it reviews these types of cases. It's a framework for review of the planning board's and staff's review of these cases. They're not laws or regulations. It's simply a process by which the planning board reviews these privately owned public utilities that's not subject to zoning. As Ms. Borden indicated, it's a blueprint, it's a process, not law. Turning to the state, as Ms. Hassan indicated, this project has been accepted by the Public Service Commission as a SBO, which is a small brownfield or other category. And PEPCO has approved the project's interconnection within its distribution system. By reference, we would incorporate and adopt the SES guidelines in the staff report at pages 6 through 9, as well as in our narrative at pages 16 through 21. And for the board's edification, we also provided 2 exhibits in this case. One was in response to recommendation number 7 for a circulation plan for emergency vehicles. So you have that. And we also provided a white paper from NC State regarding the health and safety summary of these facilities for everyone's edification. With that, Mr. Chairman, I really don't have anything further to add again, other than we are in agreement. We have no objections to staff's recommendations. We have addressed one of those recommendations already with respect to the circulation plan. And we would happy to answer any questions. We have Mr. Pippin with us as well as Mr. Collinson. And we would just respectfully request the board's transmittal of the recommendation as recommended by staff, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tedesco, for the thoroughness of that. It's helpful to hear. Commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Tedesco or members of the team?
I have one. Yes. I see what you're doing is for the vehicle access, it's going to be a limestone chip or equal driveway. I'm assuming that's going to be permeable.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
I can't hear you.
Mr. Pippin, Mr. Collins.
Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, that'd be permeable, and that's one of the drivers to the stormwater management requirements as far as making sure that those that driveway as well as the fire break, it'll serve 2 functions, be a fire break, is treated for stormwater as well.
Okay. And the other thing is I just wanted to mention, since you talked about the changes in the state law for increasing the capacity for green vehicles. So when you come before if your clients like Royal Farm and the other gas stations about the state program, and when they want to put up new gas stations to start considering putting up the electric chargers.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Nothing else.
We do have our bully pulpit. I'm glad you bring it up. All right, other questions for the applicant, members of the team? Seeing none, I will now turn to the public on this. I have 3 people listed to sign up, but I'm not sure that they're here. Senator Benson, is Senator Benson on the line? Give her the opportunity to speak first. I don't see or hear her. We also have a Mr. James Anthony. Mr. Anthony, are you here? Are you with Mr. Jefferson there? Okay, you're on mute, but I saw that as a yes. Ms. Jefferson, if you could unmute your line there. All right, thank you. Yes. So we have Ms. Jefferson and we have Mr. Anthony. There's the 2 people who signed up to speak. Before you both the opportunity to speak, of course, I'm reminding you that this is a mandatory referral, as I've described before. But how do you want to manage the time? How much time do you all need? I have Ms. Jefferson listed first, so I can have you go first, unless you want Mr. Anthony to go first. I'll leave it to you all.
Okay. Yes, I'm Karen Jefferson. Put my screen here where you can see me. All right. Yes, the community has grave concerns over this massive project. And at our meeting, thank you, Mr. Tedesco, for taking the time to speak with us. we were concerned about the cons of the solar arrays. There are pros and cons in every project. So we really didn't get a sufficient response or answer as to the cons, even though we've read about them. We know about the cons of the solar panel arrays. And, you know, this is a small residential community, and everyone is concerned about putting commercial graded projects in between the homes here. And, you know, you state that there's 12 acres. Well, there's homes that surround those 12 acres. And coming off of Campbell Avenue, there are about 6 homes off of Campbell Avenue. And it seems as though it's a narrow street. If this is an exit from the solar array field, you're coming straight through a community with homes on both sides on a single lane street. And that is unacceptable to those residents there. I have submitted the petitions online there where we have residents that are opposed to the project. And this is something that we want to tackle, but I'm from what I'm hearing, this thing is already in the making. You've got PEPCO approval, from my understanding. So what we say or what we do here, we don't know how much effect it's going to take, but we're definitely opposed to this project. With the school there, right across on Brook Road, Doswell, you have the buses in and out. It's just too much residential traffic for this massive project that emits these electronic toxic chemicals in the air, especially in building and in operating. The maintenance requirement for them seemingly is something that one of our residents works as a maintenance worker for solar panel companies, and it's a mess. It's a task in itself for the maintenance and the runoffs, the drainage. They've taken pictures of the ones down on Ventura of the overgrown shrubbery around those panels. It's not being maintained. So, you know, they've talked about landscaping and the maintenance of them, but the proof is in the pudding. After so many years or months, they're just not being maintained, and it's definitely something that we don't want in our area. Yes, it's classified as one of the brown areas. However, what other projects can we put there? The planning board, you know, we didn't even have a swimming pool in the area for our residents. In ground, above ground, we need more recreational facilities, a parking lot, a satellite parking lot. You know, we have areas like the subway there where we may need more parking facilities, a playground. You know, there's so many things that would benefit our residents that could be constructed in these brown areas versus something as toxic as is solar arrays. And these are massive. Those are a lot of panels, and you will be able to see them from the streets. So where do we go from here? It's a lot of disdain in our neighborhood about them coming in the area. So we just want to hear about the cons more so instead of the pros. Even though we know them, we just want you to know what you're putting in here on us and the effects of this project. So I'll turn it over to the Vice President.
Thank you, Ms. Jefferson. Mr. Anthony, take it away.
Well,
I see you've got your Earth Day shirt on, by the way, Mr. Anthony.
That's okay. I'm happy to about the fact that we actually got notified so we can participate in this, but it does appear that the decision has already been made. But there are questions like this one. I mean, neighborhoods refer to their neighbors, and these items that they're putting in the community, they are not for the neighbors. The people putting them in here don't live in the neighborhood. They're not going to stay in the neighborhood. I'm concerned about the fact that we are hearing about this, and everything I've heard in this hearing indicates that we need a lawyer. We need to get a lawyer to represent the community so that we can understand really what's going on. We are now at a stage where we're hearing more about this and what has already happened. And after learning more about the planning board and the things that they do and all the authority that's coming out of the Maryland Assembly, in terms of Prince George's County, we need to reboot and have a valid opportunity to come against these people putting these items in the community. Because right now, we don't have an opportunity. I mean, to even put up a front or the kind of statements that would help us deter them from putting this in the neighborhood. The idea of the green goals of the country, we are for that. We have an urban farm, and we're all for that. But what we can't do is defend ourselves and our community against what is going on right now without proper notice. And we do need some legal assistance if we can't depend on the county representatives and the public servants that we have in office and that we pay for by our taxes. And we can't depend on them to help us understand and to see what we want in the community as opposed from a business perspective and what they're trying to do out of Maryland or to the county, then this is not going to work. So whatever you put in and at this time, it's just going to be insufficient for us. So what I would ask for is this. I'd ask for you to give us more time for us to meet with the people in the community to put and for us to finish the campaign we're trying to do to show you the number of people that really oppose to this. It's about votes. We understand that. And if we come into this game, but to leave the neighborhood with a sour taste in their mouth because you guys are doing things to help other business people get ahead, that's not a good deal. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. We'll see what happens.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. I appreciate it. Appreciate both of you taking the opportunity to speak. I hear your frustrations loud and clear. Again, per state law, these what are considered privately owned public utility projects, such as these community solar projects, are not subject to local zoning. So while we do have this mandatory referral process in place, that's the limits of our authority. That's just the way this one is. So with that, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to speak. I'm going to turn, Mr. Anthony, you have something else you want to say?
Well, no, I just want to recognize the fact. I mean, Bet, you just told me that it's over. I mean, because you don't have to recognize authority. So it's just done. We're not going to allow.
I mean, I can't predict what we're about to do in terms of the mandatory referral process, but the reality of it is, according to state law, yes, you're correct. This is the nature of our process on a case like this. So I hear your frustration about that loud and clear, Mr. Anthony. So thank you both very much for testifying about this and for sharing your concerns around this. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak? Anyone else who signed up? Senator Benson, did you go up, by the way?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I did not get the name of the association that the two citizens represent. I don't know if it was stated earlier. I thought
Walker Mill Road Association.
Walker Mill Road. Okay, thank you.
It's called.
Is that correct, Ms. Jefferson, Mr. Anthony?
Well, it's technically it's Brook Road, Rollins Avenue, Walker Mill Road, Civic Association. So the acronyms that we use is BRW. So when you see BRW, Civic Association, to cut it short.
Excellent. Okay. BRW Civic Association.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Okay, so we have no one else on to speak on this. Commissioners, we certainly have heard the concerns from folks in the community on this mandatory referral. We also had a well-articulated description of the project, both from staff and from the applicant, and turn it back over to you. Staff's recommendation is to forward these recommendations to the applicant. I don't have concerns around that. That is the nature of this process. So any discussion, and if not, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would definitely like to thank the representatives from BRW Civic Association for being here today and sharing their thoughts and comments. And with that, I move that we accept the recommendations of staff and approve the transmittal of MRF-2022-025 to PG Solar LLC in care of Matthew Tedesco, Esquire.
Thank you. We've got a motion. There was a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Giraldo. Got a motion by Commissioner Washington and a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Discussion on the motion?
Well,
No discussion?
Mr. Chair. Oh.
Yes. Madam Vice
Yeah,
Chair.
I'm glad you indicated what our role as a mandatory referral. It is not that we are saying this is something that has to happen, but that we look at the items and we decide whether or not enough information is given to protect the citizens and whether or not this is something that can happen. Now, we don't decide whether or not it can happen. That's not our role. But we're looking at the items in the agenda that's presented and making a referral. We don't make the decision about whether or not this can happen or should happen, but we have a very specific role in terms of referring.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I appreciate that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jefferson. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Thank you, Mr. Pippin. Thank you, Mr. Tedesco, Mr. Collinson, Ms. Hassan. Thanks, everybody, for your participation on this. Next item on our agenda is item 7. This is a remand by the District Council for a detailed site plan, DSP 21001 Suffers Point. Just a note that this case was approved at the Planning Board meeting of February 2nd, 2023, and remanded by the District Council on April 24, 2023. So just a reminder for folks in the public too, as well as for us, this is a continuous request. This is not a public hearing on the remand. The testimony should be limited just to this hearing request. The District Council remanded the matter to us on May 11th to have the Planning Board address the DPI waiver, which isn't, we're essentially passing information through to the District Council on this because, obviously we don't consider what DPI considers, but we're making sure that the DPI information is in the record and will be transmitted to the District Council. And then the one item that is truly before us on this are the density calculations, just to make sure that we feel that there's enough information and that the backup information on how the density calculations will come to are adequate. One other note is pursuant to the prior zoning ordinance upon which the application was decided, the Planning Board is to make a decision on these DSPs within 60 days. So the purpose of the timeline is to protect the applicant from any undue delay by having matters linger and linger and linger. So this application is actually already extended beyond the 60 days. The applicant has asked for a 1-week extension because there are some technical notice issues that they want to address. And that's what's before us, is just the extension request on this. So that's my preamble for this case. We have Mr. Rivera, who's representing the applicants. We have Ms. Kosak, who's going to give the staff presentation. Anyone who testifies on this is an evidentiary hearing. Is that right, Ms. Coleman? That's not right.
No, since it's simply a continuous request.
So scrap what you said about that. That's just some old notes. So let's turn to staff for the presentation on this very, very limited scope. And Ms. Kosak, take it away.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, thank you.
Okay. I don't have much to say for the record. This is Jill Kozak with the Urban Design Section. Again, the item number 7 is the remand of DSP 21001 for Suffrage Point. And the applicant's representative requested a continuance to the October 12th planning board hearing date, and staff is in agreement. It should be noted that the staff memo and backup have already been published online for the October 12th hearing date, in case that is what happens today. And again, staff recommends approval of the continuance to October 12th. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Did we, Ms. Kozak, I mean, we'll hear from the applicant, but the request for the continuance, do you have an understanding of what the applicant was needing the additional week for? I will hear from the applicant, but I just want to make sure that was taken in by you all as well, and you all were comfortable with that.
Yes, no, the issue was that the applicant posted signs for the October 5th hearing date. The code is very specific that the sign should be in a V shape. And I guess the signs that were picked up weren't enough to do the V shape on the property. And so, an abundance of caution, they asked for the continuance to allow them to get the additional sign to have the V-shaped posting signs on the property as specifically required by code. So.
Okay, that's about as technical as you can get. Thank you for that, Ms. Kessler. So, commissioners, any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant on this continuance request? None. Mr. Rivera, take it away. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As you stated in your preparatory remarks, this is a very limited hearing today as to the continuance and in the future as to the remand. The continuance request, which is before you today, is to address the posting issue that Ms. Kozak just referenced, as well as it gave us additional time to address the very important density calculation issue that you had just mentioned. So with that, they were able to complete their report. It's now been published for the next week's hearing with 2 weeks notice, and we would appreciate the continuance that day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have some, thank you. Questions, Commissioner's questions for the applicant before we hear from the public? None. So we have a few folks signed up to speak on this. Again, this is not on the substance of the issue. This is on the continuance request. We have Mr. Smith, who I see online. There's a representative from the city of Hyattsville, Holly Simmons. Ms. Simmons, are you here?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. We also have Irene Marsh. Ms. Marsh, are you with us? No, and we also have Chris Curry, Mr. Curry, Christopher Curry. No, Mr. Curry. So we have Mr. Smith and Ms. Simmons. Let me, Ms. Simmons, unless you object, I'm going to start with you and take it away.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Shapiro and members of the Planning Board. For the record, Holly Simmons, Acting Director of Community and Economic Development with the City of Hyattsville, speaking on behalf of the Mayor and City Council. The applicant has requested the hearing for this agenda item be continued to October 12th to ensure full compliance with the notice provisions for the hearing. As noted in our letter to the Planning Board dated October 3rd, 2023, the agenda item includes nearly 200 pages of materials, including but not limited to the technical staff report, PowerPoint presentation, and materials submitted by the applicant in response to the District Council's May 11th order of remand. The agenda and materials were posted on September 28th, and many of our impacted residents, interested parties, and parties of record will not have had adequate time to digest and respond to this information if the agenda item is continued to October 12th. We request that the Planning Board continue the hearing until November 2nd to allow adequate time for city residents and interested parties to review and respond to the lengthy and detailed materials. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Now I'll turn to Mr. Smith.
Great. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair and Planning Board members?
Yes, sir. We can hear you well.
There's just a few points. Under section 125.05 regarding technical staff reports, it's likely the Planning Board cannot hear this case today anyway because the technical staff report, technical staff memo wasn't published until 1 week prior to today, and the law requires that the Planning Board publish TSRs on its website no less than 14 days prior. That's one point. Second point is that the technical material, the backup for this case wasn't posted until September 28th, and only the link was provided only under the October 12th agenda item. So based on those 2 points, you cannot hear the case today anyway. The applicant's request only mentioned, not in addition to the sign posing, says that it will give the applicant and the planning staff additional time to review. But where is the public in that picture? And this has been a question all the way through. Mr. Shapiro mentioned the 60-day action deadline. That passed 2 months ago in July, or close to more than 2 months ago in July. So there's no action deadline here. You should hear this case sometime in the not too distant future, but only after the planning board and department have provided the concerned public and the affected community with the transparency, access, and opportunity needed for review and comment, the kinds of transparency and access and opportunity that 4 nonprofits, the city of Hyattsville, and multiple local residents have reasonably requested. And we put that request in a detailed letter to you. So Sustainable Hyattsville submitted a letter on September 25th, or September 28th, or 25th to 28th, and the nonprofits submitted it on, I think, October 1st. These are reasonable requests, and it's precisely because of the controversial and complex nature of this case, the environmental sensitivity of the site, the long history of procedural errors by the agencies, and the long history of environmental violations by the applicant, that it's not only the public's interest, but the planning boards and the district councils and arguably the applicant's interest to ensure that you can make an informed decision based upon a robust evidentiary record created through a fair and transparent process. And this has been an issue for more than 5 years. We pointed out in our letter, actually pointed out to the planning board in the letter on July 25th of 2018, and in our most recent letters, that the planning board still continues to publish on its website the false statement that no related documents are available for this case. It's through your development activity monitoring system. This is more than 5 years since we've raised these issues, we've raised it repeatedly, and yet it persists. We've made reasonable requests, and the 170 pages of new material published on the website about a week ago, after the close of business, include multiple technical and legal documents, some of which refer to other documents or information that are not in the record that we then need to chase down just so we can provide you with informed comments. And we've raised a number of really relevant issues with you in the past and with the district council. And we think they're important with respect to complying with the zoning ordinance and serving the public with a really well-informed decision that protects the communities and the environment and complies with the law, conforms with the general plan and all the other plans that this should conform to. We've made reasonable requests in our letters to you. We've given you our rationale, and I hope you will honor the city's request to continue to at least November 2nd or farther down the line based on our requests. But we need time to give you to review these documents, look at the documents they refer to, provide you with informed comments on the full scope of the issues that are outlined in the district council's memo or final decision and order. And I got to tell you, there's a troubling history around this very density issue. And if I were you, I would want to make sure that that history does not continue. And that is a history where we've raised the issues around the law that applies to the density issue. And not only have staff and the planning board ignored some of that law, we have emails that we obtained through a Public Information Act request that shows communications between the staff and the applicant's attorney discussing how to convince the planning board and the district council to ignore how density is calculated. So
I just want to make sure we're still talking about the continuous request and not the
Mr. Smith, hold your thought. We want to hear from Ms. Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. Delisa Coleman, Senior Counsel for the record. I just want to make sure we're not getting into the merits of the remand, but that we're staying focused on the continuance.
I'm sorry. I appreciate that point, Ms. Coleman, and I understand your point. I'm not trying to get into the merits. I'm pointing out the troubling history behind the decision-making around this project and how it would be wise for the planning board and would serve the planning board's interest and the public's interest and the district council's interest to avoid that kind of error and make sure that we have sufficient opportunity to review all the relevant materials and provide you with well-informed comments so you can make a well-informed decision, recommendation to forward to the district council. Let's avoid the mistakes of the past where this has happened over and over and over. And again, you've got 4 nonprofits who focus on protecting the watershed and the resources and the communities. You've got the city of Hyattsville, which has jurisdiction around this property. And you've got multiple residents, some of whom live adjacent to the site and have had to endure what the applicant has done to the site for several years, all we're asking for is a fair process and a real opportunity to provide you with informed comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Appreciate that. And thank you, Ms. Coleman, as well. Anyone else? I don't think we have anyone else who signed up to speak on this. So commissioners, back to us. Let me just say from
Ms. Simmons, real quick.
I'm sorry?
I have a question for Ms. Simmons.
Yes, Commissioner.
So I wanted to find out the November, should know my dates, I think 3rd or 2nd, whatever that Thursday is that you proposed. Is that purely because it's a month away, or is there any sort of significance to that particular date that it couldn't be sooner or later than that?
In all honesty, I don't have an informed response to that. I believe that it is, I know that it is the desire of council. I believe that it's reflecting community desire as well, and anticipate that that would allow sufficient time for comprehensive review by community members and other interested parties.
Okay.
Commissioner Dorner, back to you. Commissioner Dorner.
I'll pose the same question to Mr. Smith because I think he has maybe a comment on it.
Sure. I actually think that the decision on when to reschedule should be based on when the planning board and planning department can provide the kind of transparency you've requested, and we can give you informed comments. But the other thing is, as you probably know, the city council meets on a regular schedule just the way you do. And they need time to review materials. Staff needs time to review materials. They need time to hear from us, their constituents, on our review of the materials. And their next meeting, the materials that are on the site now were released after the close of business on the 28th. The city council met the evening of Monday, October 2nd. You know that they practically work as volunteers. And their next meeting is not scheduled until at least October 16th. So the second would be probably about the soonest this should be rescheduled. But again, we're not saying don't hear the case, we're saying you should hear it in the not too distant future. But give yourselves a chance to get fully informed comments from the public and the city and the nonprofits who are engaged in this process.
That was more what I was actually looking for. FYI, I was trying to find out, does the city council have a meeting at some later date that they would actually be able to fit it into there, as well as if the planning committee for the city is meeting during that time, because that just logistically has to go actually in that reverse order where the planning committee would potentially give advice or kind of opinions to the city, and then the city would have it later on. So that's actually what I was looking for a little bit more to know.
Thank you for that. So are you okay, Commissioner Dorner? Got your info?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I saw Chris Curry pop on. Are you still there?
I'm here. Am I muted?
No, I can hear you now. We saw you for a second, but we don't see you now, but we can definitely hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to echo.
See you, sir.
Sorry. Chris Curry at 4100 Crittenden Street in Hyattsville. Just wanted to endorse Greg Smith's comments, and as a former city councilman in Hyattsville, I know that it can be frustrating sometimes to try to fit in with the schedules that pertain to the development review process, but it is really, really important that the will of the people of Hyattsville be heard. So I hope that there is a continuance.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Appreciate it. Okay, we've no one else from the public who's speaking on this matter, so let's turn back to us commissioners and our deliberation. So I've had conversations with staff about this, and the thing that I'm most focused on is what is before us for the continuance request. And the reason why we're having the continuance request, which was for very, very technical reasons, that it's a very limited scope with what's before us. I mean, there's the DPI, the issues with the DPI permitting and information. We're simply transmitting that through us back to the district council. So the only issue that we're going to be taking up of substance is going to be this one issue around the density calculation. So I feel like there's been more than adequate time, and in fairness to the applicant, this has been going on for a long time. So for what it's worth, commissioners, I am quite comfortable with this continuance for the technical reasons that have been described, and hearing this on October 12th. I'm looking to hear from you all as well to see if you have any differing opinions about this. But I certainly am always looking for ways to make sure the public has their voice heard and respect the City of Huntsville's position. But this has been going on a long time, and this is a very, very specific and narrow reason that we're taking this case up again. So with that, I'm looking to hear from my colleagues here. Any thoughts and reactions from you all?
I came to the very similar conclusion, Mr. Chairman, unless someone can articulate why a week would not give us time to deal with such a very limited scope issue. I mean, we're literally, to your point, transmitting information from one to the other. Not to oversimplify, but.
That's fair. I mean, that's kind of the way I'm reading it too. So Commissioner Doherty, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so my view is different than what I think we need to give a month on this issue. And I'm frustrated with the whole process from a number of different angles. Frustrated kind of with staff on some level, frustrated with the applicant, frustrated with the opposition. I'm not interested in seeing a bunch of letters. I'll just start in kind of reverse order. I'm not interested in seeing a bunch of letters from the opposition stating the same darn thing in some form letter that's signed off. That's just not helpful. To some extent, the opposition is culpable in us having thousands of pages and hours-long hearings on this stuff because you haven't been succinct at stating the issues that we've been discussing. To some extent, the applicant is at their own sort of fault for being at this stage and for doing some of these things because they haven't been working with the city and they haven't been working with the opposition on these things. And they've flagrantly just not cared about local laws and county laws. And they brought this on themselves. So I really don't care to have to do them a favor because they haven't been following the laws and doing things appropriately on their end. On the staff side, I'm frustrated because I feel like some of the criticisms that has come to staff from the opposition are well placed. It's not clear to me that we should be helping the applicant. And it appears from my angle that we're playing favoritism to the applicant or helping them through this process. And that's not our role. In the staff reports, I have reviewed some of the materials. In the staff report, it's not clear to me that we are actually being served by our own staff in knowing exactly or precisely what happened in that remand hearing on October 8th before it was voted on, or sorry, May 8th before it was voted on May 11th, I think, later on. There are specific issues that even the zoning hearing examiner brought up at the very end when they were determining what the remand was going to be based upon that aren't clearly expressed in the staff report. One of the issues is on the DPI waiver, and there was one complication where whether or not DPI could actually issue the waiver in that regard because it was conflicting with some county code. The other issue that the zoning hearing examiner brought up were issues that I raised when I was sort of questioning in the last case when we had it in February about chicken and egg kind of timeline in terms of when you're raising floodplain issues and the argument is that it's not in the floodplain, then those issues don't apply, but it is a floodplain originally, and whether or not we can actually raise it out in a manner that isn't dangerous or harmful to the surrounding community and ecosystem, those still apply. And that particular issue is not in the revised waiver. So when I'm looking at the materials that we have posted for next week, the waiver is being granted on specific factors. Lacking in there is something that the director of DPI is supposed to, or the acting director, whoever signing off, is supposed to consider. One of them is whether or not there's going to be additional threats to public safety or adverse impacts on other public or private property, either upstream, downstream.
Jordan, let me jump in a second respectfully. You're getting pretty deep into the merits of the case.
Yes, but this has to be, this isn't us just transmitting information. This is stuff that we need to know from DPI whenever this case comes up before us, and it cannot happen in the next week. It just is not going to happen. There's not enough time for this to be, for our staff to go back to DPI, get clarifications or get DPI at that hearing so they can actually testify to this. It's not enough time for the citizens or for the city to go back and comment on these sorts of things. It's not enough time for Mr. Rivera potentially to actually get the evidence that he would need to speak on these things. And because of that, I don't think we should be hearing this next week. There's no reason why we can't wait a month or a month and a week to have this later on. And I won't be voting in favor on the case right now if we're going to be having it extended only a week. And there's some serious concerns, I think, if we push it only a week, that they're definitely not going to be able to address. And I don't even know if they're addressable entirely a month from now. My opinion hasn't changed on these issues, and I watched the hearing that sent us the remand from the county council. I don't think we are just transmitting information. We are also voting on whether or not we want to support this DSP going forward. It's not just as simple as transmitting information. If the assumption is that everyone's going to vote in favor, then yeah, it's just transmitting information. But that's not actually what the vote would be about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr.
Vice Chair, Commissioner Geraldo.
Yeah, since the city of Hyattsville has requested at least a 30-day extension, and granted this project has been around for a while, another 30 days or 40 days, I don't think it's a problem. And I think we need to respect the city of Hyattsville's request to postpone it, and at the same time give the citizens additional time to review the material. So I'm inclined to grant a continuance, but not till next week. I would like to, concur in favor along with the city of Hyattsville wants.
I mean, I hear you. I'm for what it's worth, I think even the city of Hyattsville has made it clear that their request is based upon what they've heard from folks in the community. That Mr. Smith and others are looking for more time, and the city of Hyattsville is willing to be supportive of that. For what it's worth, Commissioner Geraldo, that's what I heard, and that's what I assumed was the case. Vice Chair Bailey, your thoughts about this?
No initial thoughts.
Okay. I know we're divided around this. I'm back to the same point, and as much as I tend to want to provide as much space for community input as possible, I'm just absolutely comfortable with the shorter continuance because it's such a limited scope that we're working on here. So I don't know where this is going to go with the five of us, but I would look for a motion, and we'll see how it plays out.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request for continuance for DSP-21001 to Planning Board hearing date of October 12th, 2023.
Do we have a second? I'll second it. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion, please. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Abstain.
Well, that's not going to help.
No.
Vote no?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Geraldo.
I vote no.
Commissioner Dorner.
vote no.
I'll vote aye. The nays have it, 3-2. So with that, I'll look for another motion.
So I'll make the motion. I wasn't sure if Commissioner Washington is going to amend her motion, but I'll make the motion that that we grant the continuance for Thursday, November 2nd for DSP 21001.
I'll second it, but I just wanted to put an amendment, because I saw something with regards to that November 2nd date, that it's an extremely heavy docket. So I was wondering if you would push it over to the next week.
Yeah, that's fine. I can accept that motion or amendment to the motion if Mr. Hunt knows whether or not the 9th would work a little bit better.
Yeah, my apologies. For both November 2nd and November 9th, they are pretty heavy planning board dates. So probably November 2nd would work better than the November 9th. Okay. When November 9th is pretty heavier than the 2nd right now.
So you're comfortable with November 2nd, Commissioner Dorner and Commissioner Giraldo? That's okay?
Yes.
Okay. We've got a motion and second to continue to approve the request for continuance to November 2nd. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Dorner?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo?
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington?
Vote no. At least I'm consistent.
I'll go with Commissioner Washington and stick with consistency and vote no as well. So the ayes have it 3-2. So this case will be continued to November 2nd. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Ms. Simmons and City of Pottsville. Mr. Curry, for your participation. Thank you, staff, as well. We have one. I'm sorry, somebody else?
Yeah, can we just try and see if staff can get somebody from DeFi on that call when they're actually there? I don't know if it would be the active, but I think that would be really helpful because we haven't had them at the hearings, and since they're a crucial part of the remand request from the county council, I think that would be useful.
I missed it again. Start at the beginning. What is it you're asking for, Commissioner? I apologize.
So I wanted to ask if staff can try and get somebody from DeFi to be at that hearing date, because we've had DeFi come in during hearings in the past. That would be useful just to have them there because of the memo is an important part of the remand.
Okay, we'll certainly ask staff to see if they can get DeFi to come in, and this is for the November 2nd hearing. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Mr. Smith,
Chair, I think
this hearing is the case is closed. Do you have a process question, or is this anything related to the substance of this? If it's the substance, please don't.
No, it's process. Because the planning board, as it generally collects persons of records, email addresses, and has them on file. I think it would serve the public interest if the planning board would email as soon as possible to persons of record notice that has continued to November 2nd and set a new written comments deadline. Seems like that would be an easy lift.
I don't know what our process is, but I don't have any concerns around that. Mr. Hunt, does that violate some process that we have if we do that?
Mr. Chair, we have no issues with that. We can reach out to all the parties of record via their email addresses, no problem, to notify them of the November 2nd hearing date. No problem.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
And the new comments deadline. Thank you very much, everybody. Have good days.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll go along with what Commissioner Dorner said. I was wondering, and I would rely on Ms. Coleman on this, rather than asking them to voluntarily appear, is there a way that we could subpoena them to come?
Do we have subpoena authority?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think we do. We would also certainly put them off, which is a.
Okay.
They voluntarily come in fast.
That's fascinating. Do we have subpoena authority?
I have to verify that, but I don't believe that you do.
I mean, heck, if we do, that'd be fine. Let's.
Well, the district council does, but I don't believe that the planning board does.
Okay, all right. We'll get us a little research on that because right, we're power hungry. That would be interesting.
Okay, bye everybody. Have good days.
All right. All right, thanks, everybody. Final issue on our agenda is item 8. This is Countywide Planning Division. 2018 Water and Sewer Service Area Changes, March 2023 cycle of amendments, the CR 07620-2023. I think this will be brief. Bobby Ray is going to be giving the staff presentation. There's nobody signed up to speak. Mr. Ray, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And it's still morning for at least 6 more minutes. So good morning, Chairman Shapiro and members of the Planning Board. For the record, my name is Bobby Ray with the Countywide Planning Division. Agenda item number 8 is a review and recommendation for applications to amend the 2018 Water and Sewer Plan for the March 2023 application cycle. Next slide, please. The role of the Planning Board in this review is a determination of consistency with the general plan and to provide any information and assistance that might be needed by the county executive and or the county council. The memorandum that is included in the packet provides the planning staff's recommendations as well as the county executive recommendation for each of the applications received. The larger report provides all comments from the planning department as well as comments that have been received from WSSC, DPI, and the county health department. Next slide, please. So a total of 6 applications were received for the March 2023 amendment cycle. Of these, 4 are applications for amendments and 2 are waivers for interim septic use. The Planning Board is not required to provide recommendations on waivers, but we did include them in the accompanying report, and planning staff did provide comments on them as well. Of the 4 amendment applications, the proposed developments include a proposed new office building and site improvements to the National Harmony Memorial Park Cemetery, a contractor's office and warehouse at 8701 and 8705 Westphalia Road, proposed multifamily residential development located at 13500 Brandywine Road, and 1 single-family detached residential unit at 17027 Maryland Route 210. All 4 of the applications are being recommended by the county executive. Planning staff's recommendations mirror those of the executive. And at their regular meeting of September 6, 2023, the county council introduced resolution 076-2023 for the March 2023 cycle of amendments. The public hearing is scheduled for October 17th. And at the direction of the Planning Board, I can go through each of the 4 applications briefly, or just respond to any questions that you might have at this time.
Commissioners, is there a desire for the level of detail, or do we any questions that folks have? I'm comfortable with that. I don't need that level of detail, but if any commissioners do, we certainly can go through it.
It looks like we're in concurrence with the county executive office on everything, unless I missed something. So I think the detail that's in the report and just the lack of not having any conflicts, I think is fine. I'm comfortable with what we've got so far.
Right.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any others? We're all okay? Yeah, looks like we're okay, Mr. Ray.
Yeah.
So so anything else you want to give us, or is that it?
Oh, no, that was all. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, so commissioners, you've heard the presentation by staff. Looks like we don't have any questions or concerns with this, so I would look for a motion to approve staff comments for transmittal to the county council.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the recommendations of staff and request that staff transmit the planning comments to the Prince George's County Council.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. I think it was. I think you beat out Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Madam Vice Chair.
Vote aye.
I hear it too. Commissioner Giraldo.
So who did you say? I couldn't hear you.
I know there's babies in the background, I think. Commissioner Giraldo. Is that you, Bobby?
Not me.
Commissioner Dorner.
But that's me. My daughter's upstairs. She just she's about to eat, so she's going kind of crazy.
Well, we're wrapping up. I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Ray.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunt, any further business before us today?
Mr. Chairman, there are no additional business items before the planning board today.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you all very much for a short but robust day. And without objection, we are adjourned.